Hi, Achim here, InnerSpace Explorers. Today we do something very simple. We assemble a set of doubles. I've been asked multiple times how to do this properly. I frequently see doubles where I'm like, meh, could be different. So probably something that I should have done a long time ago. So first of all, what do we need? So a good starting point is 2 tanks. Of the same size and the same weight. This is the first thing where it starts. I just recently had one was 14.4 kilo, the other one was 13.1 kilo. That does not make any sense at all. So these are 12-liter tanks, and they have, what do they have? This one has 14.1. and this one has 14.1. So 2 identical 12-liter tanks that will give a nice double 12 tank. So the next thing is a couple of proper stainless steel bands like these. So you can see this is like one continuous piece of metal. There is a block here that's welded in. So when you screw these tight, there comes a point where you cannot continue anymore, so you can really tighten the bolt. What you should not, and they have a certain width, so these are roughly 8 centimeters, which is a great starting point. I'll explain later why these 8 centimeters are a good measurement. So for the stability, these could be 4 or 20, it doesn't matter, but 8, I will show you in a minute why this is a great thing. So what you should not use is something like that. I see this frequently. They are cheap. So what happens is you do it like this, and then you screw and you screw and you screw, and the holes become longer and longer and longer. And actually, these simply open. I mean, the tanks get loose at a certain point, and then they slide and they create all kind of issues. So trash bin. Good. So the last thing we need is a manifold. So we need a left valve and a right valve and a manifold in between. And you want a manifold like this. So there's 2 threads here. One is a right turning thread and a left turning thread. The left turning is indicated on the nut here. You have this little notch, which means it turns in the other direction. And you have these double O-rings here. So when you assemble that, actually by turning the centerpiece, the valve goes closer together or further apart. Plus you have these 2 O-rings sealing on the inside. There is another version, which I don't have here at the moment, where you have basically just one O-ring on top here that seals once you screw it in all the way. So first of all, it is hard to adjust the setting of the center knob, like is it upright or sticking back or front or whatever, unless it's the version that has like a nut on top. But in any case, the distance between these 2 valves is fixed. And there's only one O-ring that seals it, which is not what you want. And unless one of the valves I just described has an absolutely 100% matching set of tank bands, you will not manage to get these tanks absolutely parallel. So they will do something like that, which puts stress on that one O-ring, because it seals like this. Like if this is the O-ring, it's just pinched in between those. So if I do this, you saw the O-ring falling out, because obviously I'm creating issues here with the sealing. So that's the things we need. So what we do now is we take an O-ring, and you want to make sure, that's the reason I have multiple here, that the O-ring fits the type of neck that you have. So these have this little step here basically, and you can see that the O-ring really fits in here. So if I would take one of these, it actually doesn't fit. So don't try to force these in here, this will always lead to some sort of leakage. And there's other valves where this is more like conical and not a step, and this is where the thicker O-rings usually fit. So you put the O-ring on the valve, and then you screw it in. Make sure that the valve has the thread that the tank requires. So these are European tanks, so it's M25. And the valve also says M25 times 2 somewhere here. Yeah, M25 times 2. And the tank says the same, because if you would have a valve from the US, that would be, I think, 3/4 inch is what it shows. And they kind of fit in there. So with a little bit of force, you can actually force these American valves in the European tanks and the other way around. The problem is that when you fill them, that goes kind of okay till about 140 bar, and then that valve flies out and hurts or kills somebody. So be super careful that the tank matches the valve. So now you screw these in, and as you know, there's always has to be something controversial in these videos. We will talk a little bit of how to tighten these valves. There's very different ideas around, and I know people that say, well, hand tight is all that it needs, and yes, that usually is enough. Then you will have people that suddenly need a torque wrench for this, which doesn't really make any sense. When you had the old conical valves with the tape as a sealant, they actually had a required torque specification to seal them. With these, it actually does not really matter. I personally am not a big fan of the just hand tight thing. And when you open these, you normally use something like this. And I'll just show you that. So that goes in the valve. Because what you also don't want, and what I see a lot of times, is that people take a hammer and then they bang the valve directly, which is not a smart idea at all. And so now you can actually just give it a little tap with a hammer, and that actually tightens it quite well. And you will actually not be able to open that again. So that's perfect. And obviously same procedure on the other tank. Screw this in, and you screw it in all the way, because otherwise you may harm the threads. Just a little tap with the hammer, and we're good to go. Alright, now comes the funny part. Now we have to get this in. Okay, so the trick here is to get this turned and make the thread bite on each side at the same time. So I hold this, basically I'm like sitting on it and holding this a little bit together. As you can see, I squeezed it a little bit, and I try to make this as parallel as possible, so 90-degree angles everywhere. And now I'm starting to turn it. And actually, yeah, you can see I cannot get it apart anymore. So both threads, and you saw I was tilting it back and forth a little bit, so like to adjust the thread. So when you have a thread that turns in clockwise and you turn a little bit anti-clockwise, you will hear when it jumps over, it's like this cluck when you, okay, now it's in the right position. So that's what I'm basically doing here as well. And now I'm just by wiggling this a little bit so the tanks do not get seized, getting this together. And so basically what I want is this 45 degrees to the front. And that looks quite good. And as you can actually see now that also this is in here, I still have certain flexibility. And that's not what I want. I want this to be completely parallel. So now I take my first bands and put this in here. And now you can already see that when I get this up here, that this looks pretty good. And now we're back to the 8 centimeter width. So the rule of thumb is that the upper part of the bands are exactly where the shoulder of the tank starts. So a little bit higher up, so around about here. And if they're 8 centimeters, that means that the bolt is in the right position. So if I have a very slim bolt, like the thing that I just threw away, that bolt would come higher up. If I have like a very wide band, that bolt would come further down. That's why for us the 8 centimeters is a good rule of thumb to position that bolt in the right place. So I'm screwing this down just a little bit, basically to prevent it from sliding again. And then I take the second one and put it in here. And so the distance between the two bolts is 28 centimeters, which I think is 11 inches if I'm remembering correct. The cameraman's nodding, no, that's a good sign. And so obviously easiest thing, take a backplate, put it on there to do some fine adjustments, but obviously you can also just use a tape measure and measure 28 centimeters. And then you just tighten the screws. And then you're actually see that this is pretty parallel. We could see if we get it a little bit. Actually, it doesn't. So I think this is pretty good. Yeah, the cameraman also looks happy, so I think this is pretty much okay. And now our set of doubles is ready. Obviously now we tighten the screws, and then we are good to go. And when you tighten it, you put it back down, because what you also don't want is that there's any movement like this. So when I put this down again, I make sure that they are not twisted like this, which would still be possible before I tighten those bands. Okay, so now another controversial thing is there's people that say this should be kind of flexible, so you can move it around. So in case you go cave diving, you get an impact here, it can move. One of these things. So I usually tighten mine down. This is a 22 millimeter wrench, which I just couldn't find at the moment. So I just take this and I just tighten these a little bit. Obviously both in the same direction, because one is a left, one is a right valve, a right turning valve. And so this is fixed, because if this is slightly angled inward, I mean, how do you, you have to get rid of your head before you hit this with a stone. So that doesn't not really make any sense. So you see it from the side, 45 degrees. And that also means that when I'm trying to reach my center valve, if I put my hand here and I get my hand back, I basically push my hand on this one, because if I put my hand all the way back, I should just reach this with my hand. It should not restrict my movement, but if I'm all the way back, I should just feel it. So it means if I think I can't reach it, put my hand on it, and my head basically puts my hand over this so I can turn it. And so the most important thing obviously is a proper sticker. See you next time.